This is Ed Sheeran's 2014 hit, Thinking Out Loud.
Darling, I will be loving you.
And this is Marvin Gaye's Let's Get It On. Do they sound alike?
Darling, I will be loving you.
The family of Ed Townsend, who co-wrote Marvin Gaye's Let's Get It On, thought so. They filed a lawsuit alleging copyright infringement.
The plaintiffs in the lawsuit said that Sheeran basically copied the chord progression and the harmonic rhythm.
A chord is multiple notes played simultaneously. A chord progression is a series of chords played in sequence. Sheeran denied the claims.
One of the experts that they brought in the case, in fact, said there were about 30 other songs that used the exact same chord progression before Marvin Gaye's Let's Get It On. So these are so ubiquitous across music history.
Over the years, many songwriters have been accused of infringing the copyrights of another artist's work.
The pace and notoriety has really picked up over the last 20 years or so.
Why does this keep happening? Here's our guide to how the copyrights in songs work and why you're likely to keep hearing about lawsuits over them. In 2013, the floodgates of new cases opened with a big dispute, notably also involving a Marvin Gaye song.
There is certainly a lot more litigation happening over the last decade. Part of it is the effect of a very high-profile case over the song Blurred Lines.
This afternoon, a jury ruling against Pharrell Williams and Robin Thicke, finding they copied a Marvin Gaye classic. See if you hear any similarities.
The Blurred Lines case captured the popular imagination. It was Marvin Gaye. And then on the other side, you had a song that was very, very recently a giant smash hit. That may have spurred some additional parties to come out of the woodwork, see if they could get something for the similarity that they perceived.
Joseph Fishman teaches intellectual property with an emphasis on music at Vanderbilt Law School in Nashville.
There is no better place I can think of to study the music world than in Music City.
We asked him to help us explain how copyrights in music work. He explains there are two types of copyright.
One is the composition, the underlying song.
That's everything from the lyrics to the melody to the chord progression, which together form the musical composition.
Dolly Parton writes, "I Will Always Love You." Whitney Houston later records her own version of that.
The composition copyright belongs to the songwriter or publisher. In this case, Dolly Parton, regardless of who's performing the song. The second copyright is for the sound recording, the specific version you hear on an album or streaming service. The sound recording copyright typically belongs to the recording artist or their record label. In this example, that's the copyright that Whitney Houston or her label would own in her recorded version of Dolly Parton's song.
The cases that we're talking about here, like Ed Sheeran's case, we're only talking about the underlying song.
And as we'll see, it's those songwriting cases that have the most legal gray areas and ambiguities.
So the way that copyright works is if you create something that is sufficiently original, you get a copyright.
But if a songwriter feels their work has been infringed and wants to sue, how do they make their case? First, they need to show that they registered their sheet music with the U.S. Copyright Office. Then, to determine if infringement took place, there's a test. Are the similarities between the songs pure coincidence, or is there proof that the defendant had access to the original work?
We know that two songs are similar. The question is how they got to be that way. It's supposed to be a question of historical fact.
Had Ed Sheeran ever heard the Billboard-topping, platinum-certified classic Let's Get It On before? Seems pretty likely. And if you can show a songwriter likely had access to a previous song,
you move on to step number 2. Is the material that was copied substantially similar to the material from the copyright owner's work? Was it so much that it was wrongful? It was something an ordinary person would consider to be too much. And if that sounds like a very squishy standard, it's because it is, and it's what makes this area of law so unpredictable.
Over time, copyright infringement claims over songs have gone beyond copying the lyrics and chord progressions.
In the last couple of decades, it's been much more of a free-for-all.
The Blurred Lines case was as much about copying a vibe or a feel as it was the actual elements of the song.
You had people like Robin Thicke himself or Pharrell talking about how they were really going for a Marvin Gaye feel to the song.
So, how does a court determine if a new song is substantially similar to a song that both already exists and is protected by copyright? Most often, it's with a forensic musicologist.
They are going to be looking at chord progressions, tempo, rhythm, melody, lyrics, the structure, the architecture of the piece. Really, anything is fair game when they're trying to assess whether copying has occurred.
But their assessment is subjective, leading to some, well, blurred lines.
Two forensic musicologists can look at the same pieces of music and arrive at two different interpretations. It happens all the time.
Then it's up to the court to weigh all of the evidence, including the expert testimony, to reach a verdict. In the Ed Sheeran case, the jury sided with
Ed Sheeran has been found not liable in that copyright case against him.
I believe he said when he was cleared of infringement, at least I don't have to quit my day job now.
All of us should care how these cases are adjudicated. We don't want the people who make the music that we enjoy in our day-to-day lives to have to be looking over their shoulder every time they sit down to write something new and worry about being sued.